Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The champagne was flowing like water. The string quartet was playing something expensive and forgettable. And my fiancée was kissing another man like her life depended on it. I stood there in my own living room watching Selah Devereaux, soon to be Selah Granger in exactly 48 hours, press her lips against Quincy Bellamy's mouth with the kind of passion she had not shown me in months. The engagement party was supposed to be our moment, our celebration before the big day. Instead, it felt like I was watching my future implode in real time. "Elias, you okay?" Calm Caleb Mason appeared at my elbow, holding 2 beers and wearing the kind of concerned expression that meant he had seen it, too. Caleb had been my best friend since we were kids, scraping barnacles off boats at the marina. He knew me well enough to recognize the warning signs. "Just peachy," I muttered, taking one of the beers and draining half of it in one gulp. The bitter taste matched my mood perfectly. Selah finally broke away from Quincy, laughing that precise, tinkling laugh she saved for important clients and social climbers. "Oh, Quincy, you are terrible. That is just how I say hello to old friends." Old friends, right? Quincy Bellamy owned half the yacht club and thought his money made him untouchable. He had been sniffing around Selah since we announced our engagement 6 months ago, always showing up at her work events, always finding excuses to drop by the house when I was at the shop. The party guests were pretending not to stare, but I could feel their eyes on us like heat lamps. Mrs. Thompson from next door was practically vibrating with gossip potential. Ariel Forrest, Selah's maid of honor and partner in crime, was watching the whole scene with barely concealed amusement. That was when inspiration struck. I walked over to Ariel, who was sipping champagne and trying to look innocent in her designer dress. "Ariel," I said loudly enough for the nearby guests to hear, "thanks for being such a good friend to Selah. Let me give you a proper goodbye." Before she could react, I pulled her close and kissed her exactly the way Selah had kissed Quincy. Long, deep, and with enough theatrical passion to make the string quartet miss a note. Ariel's eyes went wide with shock, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers to shatter on the hardwood floor. The room went silent. When I finally released Ariel, she stumbled backward, her face flushed red. I turned to the stunned crowd with a smile that felt like broken glass. That is just how I say goodbye to old friends. Selah's face had gone from radiant to furious in record time. "Elias, what do you think you're doing?" "Learning from the best," I replied, setting down my beer and heading for the door. "Thanks for the lesson, sweetheart." I was halfway to my truck when I heard her heels clicking on the driveway behind me. "Elias, wait. You cannot just leave." I turned around to find Selah running after me in her expensive dress, looking like a magazine cover even when she was angry. That was the thing about Selah. She was stunning in a way that made men foolish and women wary. I had been both for 2 years. "Watch me," I said, pulling out my phone. My fingers moved quickly across the screen, typing out a message I should have sent months ago. "The wedding is off." I hit send before I could change my mind. Selah's phone buzzed in her purse. She fumbled for it, read the message, and her face went white. "You do not mean that. You are just upset." "I'm a lot of things right now," I said, climbing into my truck, but upset does not begin to cover it. I drove away, leaving her standing in the driveway, still holding her phone while the party guests spilled out onto the lawn to watch the show. In my rearview mirror, I could see Quincy putting his arm around her shoulders in what he probably thought was a comforting gesture. The drive to my shop gave me time to think, which was dangerous territory. Elias Granger, marine mechanic, salt-of-the-earth guy who fixed boats for a living. What was I doing with someone like Selah anyway? She was public relations director for Coastal Luxury Properties, the kind of woman who wore heels to the grocery store and knew which fork to use for the salad course. My phone buzzed with incoming calls, Selah's ringtone over and over. I let them all go to voicemail. The shop was dark and quiet, smelling of motor oil and salt air. I had built this business from nothing, starting with a single bay and a dream. Now I had 6 employees and a reputation as the best marine mechanic on the coast. It was not glamorous, but it was honest work, and it was mine. I was sitting in my office staring at a half-finished invoice when I realized Selah had left something behind in her dramatic exit. Her phone was sitting on my kitchen counter. I had driven home without thinking about it, Muscle memory taking me to the Victorian house we bought together last year. The engagement party debris was still scattered around. Empty glasses, abandoned appetizers, a few guest jackets draped over chairs. The cleaning crew would handle it tomorrow, assuming there was still going to be a tomorrow for us. Selah's phone sat there like a loaded gun. I told myself I was not going to look. I told myself I was better than that I trusted her despite what I had seen tonight. I told myself a lot of things as I picked up the phone and swiped the screen. No passcode. She had always said she had nothing to hide. The text messages opened like a door to hell. Quincy, cannot wait to get you alone after this circus. Elias is clueless. Selah, 2 more days, and then we can stop pretending. The honeymoon suite is already paid for. Shame to waste it. Quincy, Ariel did great work keeping him distracted while we finalized the South Dakota trust. Your husband is going to fund our new life without even knowing it. My hand started shaking. I scrolled up, finding weeks of messages, photographs I did not want to see, plans that made my stomach turn. They had been using the joint account I set up for wedding expenses to move money into a trust-registered, under-shell paperwork I never approved. Ariel was not just the maid of honor. She was their accomplice, feeding them information about my business accounts, my schedule, everything. The final message was from 3 hours ago, right before the party. After tomorrow, Elias will have served his purpose. Time to upgrade. I set the phone down, carefully like it might explode. The house felt different now, contaminated. Every shared memory, every plan we had made, every time I told her I loved her, it was all poison. But the shaking in my hands was not from heartbreak. It was from rage. Selah thought she was so smart, playing the long game, using me as her safety net while she planned her exit strategy. Quincy thought his money made him untouchable. Ariel thought she was clever, playing both sides. They were all about to learn how wrong they were. I picked up my own phone and called Caleb. He answered on the second ring, sounding like he had been expecting this call. How bad is it? He asked without preamble. Bad enough, I said. Meet me at Green's in an hour. We need to talk. Green's Tavern squatted on the waterfront like a barnacle on a pier, all weathered wood and dim lighting. It was the kind of place where fishermen drank away their sorrows and mechanics like me came to think. Lewis Green had been running the place for 30 years, and he knew everyone's business before they did. Caleb was already at our usual table when I arrived, nursing a whiskey and looking grim. He had changed out of his party clothes into jeans and a flannel shirt, his thinking outfit, he called it. You look like hell, he said as I sat down. Feel worse. I signaled Lewis for a beer. How much did you see tonight? Enough to know that kiss was not friendly. Caleb leaned forward. But I'm guessing there's more to the story. I pulled out Selah's phone and slid it across the table. She left this behind when she chased after me. Take a look. Caleb's expression darkened as he scrolled through the messages. His jaw tightened when he got to the photographs, and by the time he reached the financial discussions, he was swearing under his breath. Jesus. They have been planning this for months. It's better, I said, taking a long pull of beer. Check the banking app. His fingers moved across the screen, his face getting redder with each swipe. They moved $40,000. Your $40,000, wedding fund, house down payment, business expansion money, all sitting in a trust registered out of South Dakota with Quincy's fingerprints on it. The beer tasted like ash in my mouth. I was going to surprise her with a honeymoon in Hawaii. Turns out she was planning to surprise me with bankruptcy. Lewis appeared at our table with a fresh round, his weathered face creased with concern. You boys look like someone died. Everything okay? Wedding is off, I said simply. Lewis whistled low. Selah finally showed her true colors. I raised an eyebrow. You knew. Son, I have been serving drinks in this town for 3 decades. I see everything, hear everything, and forget most of it by morning. But that woman, he shook his head. She has been coming in here with Quincy Bellamy for weeks. Always sitting in the back booth, always whispering. Figured you knew. Caleb and I exchanged looks. What else have you seen, Lewis? Ariel Forrest meets with them sometimes. Brings papers. Looks nervous. And Quincy has been flashing a lot of cash lately, talking about some big investment opportunity. Lewis wiped down our table unnecessarily. Word is he is running some kind of gambling operation out of the yacht club. High-stakes poker games for people who do not want paper trails on their winnings. This was getting better by the minute. Anything else? Mrs. Thompson was in here yesterday gossiping about how Selah has been getting deliveries at odd hours. Expensive stuff, jewelry, clothes, things you probably did not buy her. Lewis straightened up. Look, Elias, I mind my own business, but you are good people. Whatever you are planning, remember revenge is a dish best served cold. After Lewis walked away, Caleb and I sat in silence for a few minutes, processing everything. The jukebox played something mournful, and the few other customers were lost in their own troubles. So what is the plan? Caleb finally asked. I pulled out a napkin and started writing. They want to play games. Let's play games. But we're going to play by my rules. The plan that emerged over the next hour was beautiful in its simplicity. Selah, Quincy, and Ariel had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. They saw a simple mechanic, a blue-collar guy who was good with his hands, but not much else. They forgot that running a successful business requires intelligence, planning, and the ability to think 3 steps ahead. First, I said, we cut off their money supply. I am calling the bank first thing Monday morning to freeze all joint accounts and report the unauthorized transfers. That will tie up their trust money for months while the investigation plays out. Caleb nodded approvingly. What about Quincy's yacht? I smiled for the first time all night. The Belladonna is his pride and joy. Custom 40-footer worth more than most people's houses. He keeps it at Harborview Yacht Club. And guess who services all the engines there? You do. I do. And I happen to know that a certain kind of neglect can make an engine sputter and die at the worst possible moment. Not permanent damage, just expensive and embarrassing repairs. We spent another hour working out the details. Caleb knew everyone in town, and his construction business gave him access to all kinds of useful information. By the time we left Green's, we had a plan that would systematically dismantle their little conspiracy while keeping us on the right side of the law. The drive home took me past the yacht club, and I could not resist a detour. Quincy's yacht was moored at the end of the dock, gleaming white in the moonlight like a floating middle finger. Tomorrow was Saturday. He always took clients out on weekend mornings, showing off his boat and his money in equal measure. I parked at the marina and walked out onto the dock. The night security guard waved. He knew me from all the repair jobs I had done here. My toolbox was in the truck, and it took me less than 10 minutes to make a small, reversible change that would guarantee the Belladonna choked at precisely the wrong time. Not enough to cause permanent harm, just enough to make the engine fail in front of a crowd that would never let him forget it. As I worked, I thought about Selah sleeping in our bed, probably wondering where I'd gone with her phone. By now, she would be panicking, trying to figure out how much I knew. Quincy would be telling her not to worry, that I was just a simple mechanic who could not possibly outsmart them. Ariel would be the weak link. She was greedy, but not particularly brave. And when the pressure started mounting, she would crack like an egg. I finished my work and headed home, feeling better than I had all night. The house was dark. Selah had not come home yet, probably staying at Ariel's place to plan their next move. Fine by me. I had work to do. The home office was in the basement, a cluttered space where I kept business records and tax documents. But I also kept copies of everything. Bank statements, credit reports, legal documents. If you're going to run a business, you need to be organized. And if you're going to wage war, you need ammunition. It took me 2 hours to gather everything I needed. Copies of the unauthorized transfers, screenshots of the text messages from Selah's phone, documentation of Quincy's suspected gambling enterprise that Lewis had mentioned. I even found records of Ariel's debts. She owed money to half the credit card companies in America, which explained why she had been so eager to help with Selah's scheme. By 3 in the morning, I had enough evidence to destroy all 3 of them. The question was how to use it for maximum effect. I made coffee and sat in the kitchen, staring at the pile of documents. Outside, the first hints of dawn were creeping across the sky. In a few hours, Quincy would be taking his yacht out for a morning cruise, and his engine would die right in front of the yacht club's outdoor dining area, where all his wealthy friends would be having brunch. That was just the opening act. The coffee shop on Main Street was busy with the Saturday morning crowd. Tourists, locals, and the kind of people who thought paying $6 for coffee made them sophisticated. I arrived early and chose a table near the back where I could see the entire room. Ariel showed up exactly at 9, looking like she had not slept. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her normal designer outfits. She spotted me immediately and hurried over, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "Thank God you are here," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "We need to talk about last night." I figured. I sipped my coffee and studied her face. Ariel had always been the nervous type, the kind of person who jumped to shadows and worried about everything. It was what made her such a useful accomplice for Selah. She was thorough because she was paranoid. "Look, Elias, I know how it looked with Selah and Quincy, but it is not what you think." "Really? What is it then?" Ariel fidgeted with her purse strap. "They are old friends, you know that. Sometimes Selah gets a little affectionate when she has been drinking. It does not mean anything." I nodded thoughtfully. "You are right. I probably overreacted. Cancel the wedding. Stormed out like that. Pretty dramatic even for me." The relief on her face was almost comical. "Exactly. You know Selah loves you. She has been planning this wedding for months. She would be devastated if you really called it off." "Speaking of planning," I said casually, "I have been looking at our finances, trying to figure out the final costs for everything. There seem to be some discrepancies in the wedding account." Ariel's face went pale. "Discrepancies? Missing money. About $40,000 worth of missing money." I leaned forward. "You would not know anything about that, would you?" She started to stammer, her hands shaking as she reached for her coffee cup. I do not know what you were talking about. Maybe you should ask Selah about that." "I would, but she left her phone at the house last night." I pulled out Selah's phone and set it on the table between us. Funny thing about phones, they remember everything. Ariel stared at the phone like it was a snake. "Elias, I can explain. I am listening." The story came out in a rush of words and tears. Ariel was drowning in debt, had been for years. Credit cards, student loans, medical bills from her mother's treatment. She was barely keeping her head above water. When Selah offered her $5,000 to help with some financial planning, she jumped at the chance. "I did not know they were stealing from you," she insisted. "Selah said it was money you had already agreed to invest with Quincy, that you just did not want to deal with the paperwork. And the text messages, the photographs, the plans to leave me after the wedding." Ariel's shoulders slumped in defeat. "I knew about the affair. I tried to talk Selah out of it, but she said you were boring, that you did not understand her ambitions. Quincy could give her the life she really wanted. And you helped them. I needed the money." Her voice was barely a whisper. "My mother's treatments, the bills. I was going to lose everything." I felt a flicker of sympathy for her, but it died quickly. "So you decided to help them steal mine instead." Before Ariel could respond, my phone buzzed with a call from Caleb. "Elias, you need to get down to the yacht club. Quincy is having some engine trouble." I smiled and answered the call. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that leaves him dead in the water in front of half the town's social elite. His engine died right in the middle of the harbor, and the Coast Guard had to tow him back. He is screaming at everyone in sight." "That is terrible," I said, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. "I will be right there." I hung up and looked at Ariel, who was staring at me with growing understanding. "You did something to his boat." "I fixed a problem," I corrected. "Quincy has been running his mouth about what a great sailor he is, how his boat is so much better than everyone else's. Turns out he is not as good at maintenance as he thought." Ariel's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She looked at the screen and paled even further. "It is Selah." "Answer it," I said, but put on speaker. Ariel's hand shook as she accepted the call. Selah's voice filled the space between us, tight with panic. "Ariel, where are you? I have been calling all night. Elias took my phone and Quincy's boat just broke down in front of everyone. Something is wrong. I am having coffee." Ariel stammered. "With who?" "Ariel, you sound strange. What is going on?" I leaned forward and spoke directly into the phone. "She is having coffee with me, sweetheart. We are having a very interesting conversation about financial planning." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. When Selah finally spoke, her voice was ice cold. "Elias, I should have known you would drag Ariel into this." "I did not drag anyone anywhere. Ariel came to me, remember? Wanted to explain how that kiss last night did not mean anything. How you and Quincy are just old friends." I picked up Ariel's coffee cup and took a sip. "She has been very helpful. Whatever Ariel told you, she is lying. She has been jealous of us from the beginning." Ariel's face crumpled. After everything she had done for Selah, this was the thank you she got. Thrown under the bus at the first sign of trouble. "Actually," I said, Ariel has been very honest. She told me all about your mother's medical bills, her debt problems, and how you offered her money to help with some planning. She also mentioned that she did not realize she was helping steal from me. That is not, Selah started, then stopped. She was smart enough to realize she was digging herself deeper. Here's what is going to happen, I continued. Ariel is going to walk away from this mess right now. She's going to pay back every penny she took from me, and she's going to stay away from both of us. In exchange, I will not press charges for theft and fraud. Ariel nodded eagerly. Yes, I will pay it back. All of it. As for you, Selah, we need to have conversation. A face-to-face conversation. Meet me at the house in 1 hour. And if I do not, I smiled even though she could not see it. Then I start making phone calls. Your boss at Coastal Luxury Properties might be interested to know how you have been using company resources for personal business. The Internal Revenue Service might want to look at that South Dakota trust. And I'm sure the local newspaper would love a story about the town's most photographed couple and their dramatic breakup. The line went dead. Selah had hung up, but the message was clear. She would be at the house. Ariel was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. What happens to me? That depends on you, I said, standing up. You can keep being their accomplice and go down with the ship, or you can cut your losses and start over. But choose quickly. This train is picking up speed, and I will not offer this deal again. I left her sitting in a coffee shop and drove to the yacht club. The scene was everything Caleb had promised and more. Quincy's pristine yacht was tied up at the dock, surrounded by curious onlookers and marina staff. Quincy himself was standing on the pier, red-faced and shouting at anyone who would listen. This is sabotage, he was yelling at the harbor master. Someone tampered with my engine. I walked over with my toolbox, putting on my best concerned expression. Having some trouble, Quincy? He spun around, his face twisted with rage. Elias, thank God, someone sabotaged my boat. The engine just died right in the middle of the harbor. That is terrible, I said, climbing aboard to examine the engine. Let me take a look. It took me about 10 minutes to diagnose and clear the reversible fault I had orchestrated. The engine started immediately, purring like a contented cat. Quincy's relief was palpable. You are a lifesaver, Elias. I do not know what I would have done without you. Just doing my job, I replied, packing up my tools. Though, I have to ask, when is the last time you had the fuel system thoroughly serviced? Problems like that usually point to sloppy maintenance. Quincy's face darkened. Are you saying this is my fault? I am saying boats require regular care, and if you do not take care of them, they will embarrass you at the worst possible moment. I climbed back onto the dock. But hey, that is why I stay busy, right? As I walked away, I could hear Quincy explaining to anyone who would listen that the problem was a simple maintenance issue, not sabotage. His reputation as a master sailor had taken a hit, and everyone at the yacht club would remember the day his boat died in the harbor. 1 down, 2 to go. The house felt different when I walked through the front door. Maybe it was knowing that everything Selah and I had built together was a lie. Or maybe it was the way the afternoon light fell through the windows, highlighting the engagement party debris that still littered the living room. Either way, it did not feel like home anymore. I spent the time before Selah arrived cleaning up, not because I cared about the mess, but because I needed something to do with my hands. The champagne glasses went into the dishwasher, the leftover food into the trash, the flowers into the garbage disposal. By the time I finished, it looked like the party had never happened. Selah's car pulled into the driveway, exactly 1 hour after our phone call. I watched from the kitchen window as she sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes, probably gathering her courage or planning her strategy. When she finally got out, she looked like she was going to war. Designer jeans, silk blouse, heels that clicked against the driveway like gunshots. She used her key to let herself in, calling my name as she entered. Elias, we need to talk. In here, I replied from the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway, and for a moment, I remembered why I had fallen for her in the first place. Selah was beautiful in a way that made you forget your own name. Tall, poised, with the kind of confidence that came from always getting what she wanted. But now I could see the calculation behind her smile, the way her eyes assessed every situation for advantage. You look tired, she said, settling into the chair across from me at the kitchen table. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Has it? Elias, I know you're upset about last night, but you are blowing this way out of proportion. Quincy and I have history. Yes, but it is ancient history. That kiss was just nostalgia. I pulled out her phone and set it on the table between us, just like I had with Ariel. Ancient history. Selah's eyes flicked to the phone, and I saw a flash of panic before she regained her composure. You went through my phone. You left it here. I was going to return it, but then I got curious about all those messages from Quincy and Ariel and several banks I've never heard of. She reached for the phone, but I was faster, pulling it back before she could grab it. Those are private communications, Elias. You had no right. I had every right. We are engaged, remember? Or we were. Until I found out you'd been planning to rob me blind and run off with your old boyfriend. Selah sat back in her chair, her mask finally slipping. It is not what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you have been using me as your personal bank while planning your exit strategy. $40,000, Selah. That is not pocket change. That money was shunted into a trust with Quincy's name on it. I leaned forward. Did you really think I was that foolish? That I would hand over everything I worked for and smile while you walked away? For the first time since I had known her, Selah looked uncertain. She had built her entire plan on the assumption that I was a simple mechanic who would not notice a few missing numbers on a bank statement. The idea that I might be smarter than she had given me credit for clearly had not occurred to her. The wedding is in 24 hours, she said finally. Our friends, our families, they're all expecting us to get married. You cannot just throw that away because of some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Selah. I read the messages. After tomorrow, Elias will have served his purpose. Time to upgrade. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a confession. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I could see the calculation behind them. Okay. Yes, Quincy and I have been close. But it is not about the money, Elias. It is about feeling alive again. Feeling alive. You are a good man, she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. You are stable, reliable, everything a woman should want in a husband. But you are also safe, predictable. Being with you is like living in a museum. Everything is beautiful and well-maintained, but nothing ever changes. I pull my hand away. So you decided to spice things up by committing fraud. Quincy makes me feel like I am 25 again. He is exciting, dangerous. He is a criminal. I interrupted. Lewis Green told me about the gambling operation he is running out of the yacht club. High-stakes poker games. Money changing hands off the books. Is that the kind of excitement you are looking for? Selah's face went pale. You do not know what you are talking about. I know more than you think. I stood up and walked to the counter where I had left the folder of documents I compiled the night before. I know about Ariel's debts and how you used them to manipulate her. I know about the shell paperwork Quincy set up to hide his profits. I know about the favors he has been trading to certain local officials to keep his operation running. I dropped the folder on the table in front of her. I also know that as of this morning, all our joint accounts have been frozen pending a fraud investigation. That trust money you were counting on is tied up in legal red tape that could take years to untangle. Selah opened the folder with shaking hands, her face growing paler as she flipped through the pages. How did you get all this? I'm not just a mechanic, Selah. I run a business. I employ 6 people. I deal with banks, lawyers, accountants, and insurance companies. I know how to follow a paper trail. I sat back down across from her. Did you really think I built all this by being foolish? She closed the folder and looked at me with something that might have been respect. What do you want? I want you out of my house, out of my life, and out of my bank accounts. I want you to call everyone on the wedding guest list and tell them the truth, that you have been having an affair and the wedding is off. And if I do not? I smiled, and this time there was no warmth in it at all. Then I start making phone calls. Your boss, the Internal Revenue Service, the state's financial crimes unit, the local newspaper. I have enough evidence here to put both you and Quincy in prison for a very long time. Selah stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, trying to find an angle. Finally, she realized there was not one. You bastard, she said quietly. I am a bastard. You are the one who has been lying and stealing for months. She stood up, smoothing down her blouse with hands that were no longer quite steady. Fine. You win. I will call off the wedding, pack my things, and disappear from your perfect little life. Good. She started toward the door, then turned back. You know, Elias, You might have won this round, but you're going to end up alone. No woman is ever going to be enough for you because you do not know how to take risks, how to really live. You will spend the rest of your life in this house working on your boats, wondering what might have been. Maybe, I said, but I will sleep well at night knowing I am not a thief and a liar. After she left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the silence. The house felt empty, but it also felt clean, like a fever had broken. My phone rang several times, probably wedding vendors, family members, and friends who had heard the news. I let them all go to voicemail. Around sunset, Caleb showed up with a six-pack of beer and a pizza. Figured you might need some company, he said, settling into Selah's chair. How is the word spreading? Like wildfire. Mrs. Thompson has been working overtime, and Green's had a steady stream of customers all day asking about the drama. Ariel's been crying at the coffee shop for hours, and Quincy's been drinking heavily at the yacht club. I opened a beer and took a long sip. Think it is over. Caleb shook his head. Not yet. Cornered animals are dangerous, and you just cornered 3 of them. They are going to try to fight back. He was right. Selah was too proud to just disappear quietly. Quincy had too much to lose, and Ariel was too desperate to give up without a fight. This was just the end of the first act, but I was ready for whatever came next. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. Today was supposed to be my wedding day. Instead, I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and reading the local newspaper social section, which featured a prominent announcement about the postponement of the Granger-Devereaux wedding due to unforeseen circumstances. Selah had managed to spin the story, making it sound like a mutual decision rather than the implosion it actually was. But anyone who knew the real story would read between the lines. My phone had been buzzing all morning with calls and texts from friends, family members, and vendors. I answered a few. My sister Harper, my parents, a couple of close friends, but mostly I let them go to voicemail. What was I supposed to say? That the woman I planned to marry had been systematically robbing me while planning to run away with her ex-boyfriend? That my entire relationship had been a lie? Around noon, Caleb showed up looking grim. We have got problems, he announced, settling into his usual chair. What kind of problems? The kind that involve lawyers and police reports. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of a post on Selah's professional page. The statement was carefully worded, professionally written, and absolutely devastating. It is with great sadness that I announce the end of my engagement to Elias Granger. While I had hoped we could work through our differences privately, Elias's increasingly controlling and paranoid behavior has made that impossible. His accusations of infidelity and financial impropriety are not only false, but deeply hurtful. I have been forced to seek legal counsel to protect myself from his harassment and threats. I asked for privacy during this difficult time. Controlling and paranoid. I read aloud. Harassment and threats. I blew out a breath. She is good. I will give her that. It gets worse, Caleb said, scrolling to the comments. Look at the responses. The comments were a mix of support for Selah and speculation about what had really happened. Several people mentioned seeing me with her phone at the coffee shop, making it sound like I was some kind of stalker. Ariel had commented with a long, tearful message about how my behavior had been increasingly erratic and how she was afraid for Selah's safety. They're trying to flip the script, I said, setting down the phone. Make me look like the bad guy. And it is working, Caleb said. Mrs. Thompson stopped by my shop this morning, asking if I thought you might be dangerous. Lewis has been getting questions about your drinking habits. Someone even called the police to do a wellness check on Selah. A cold knot formed in my stomach. This was exactly the kind of move Selah would make. When you cannot win on the facts, change the narrative. She was using her public relations skills to turn herself into the victim and me into the villain. There is more, Caleb continued. Quincy is telling people that you sabotaged his boat, that you have been threatening him. He is talking about filing charges. He cannot prove I touched his boat. He does not have to prove it. He just has to make people believe it. And with Selah backing up his story, Caleb shrugged. Small towns love drama, but they also love taking sides. Right now, you are outnumbered. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray sky. This was chess, not checkers, and Selah was better at it than I had given her credit for. She had anticipated my moves and prepared her counterstrike. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated how much I had learned about her operation. "Caleb," I said, turning back to him. "Remember that gambling ring Lewis mentioned? The one Quincy has been running out of the yacht club?" "Yes." "What if someone tipped off the state police about it?" Anonymous tip backed up with solid evidence. Caleb's eyes lit up with understanding. "You think they would raid the place?" "I think they would have to investigate. And if they found evidence of illegal gambling and tax evasion." I smiled for the first time all day. Hard to play the victim when you're being arrested on felony charges. We spent the next hour going through the evidence I had compiled. Quincy had been sloppy, leaving digital trails everywhere. Transfers, emails discussing games and players, even photographs on his social media showing large amounts of cash that did not match his legitimate income. The anonymous tip went to the state police financial crimes unit, complete with a detailed dossier. I used a prepaid phone and a voice modulation application to make the call, reporting suspicious activity at the yacht club and providing specific dates and times when illegal games had taken place. By evening, the wheels were in motion. Monday morning brought news that spread through town like wildfire. The state police had executed warrants at the yacht club, seizing computers, financial records, and a significant amount of cash. Quincy Bellamy had been arrested on charges of operating an illegal gambling enterprise, money laundering, and tax evasion. The local newspaper's website crashed from traffic as everyone tried to read the details. Quincy's booking photograph made the front page, showing him haggard and desperate. The article mentioned that the investigation was ongoing and that additional arrests were expected. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, friends, people who suddenly wanted to hear my side of the story. I was not talking. Not yet. Selah's social media had gone quiet. Her carefully crafted victim narrative was collapsing now that her boyfriend was facing charges. Ariel had deleted her account entirely, probably on the advice of a lawyer. Tuesday brought the next shoe to drop. The Internal Revenue Service announced it was reviewing several individuals connected to the yacht club gambling operation for tax issues. Selah's name appeared on the list of people whose financial records were being examined. Her employer, Coastal Luxury Properties, released a statement saying that Selah had been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. Her professional reputation, built over years of careful networking and strategic relationships, was crumbling overnight. Wednesday was when Ariel finally broke. She showed up at my shop looking like she had not slept in days, her eyes red from crying and her hands shaking. "Elias, please. I need to talk to you." I led her into my office and closed the door. "What is on your mind, Ariel?" "They are going to arrest me," she said, collapsing into a chair. "The police came to my apartment this morning with a warrant. They took my computer, my phone, all my financial records." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you are not." She looked at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. "You planned this whole thing, the raid, the investigation, everything." I did not confirm or deny it. "What do you want from me?" "I want to make a deal. I will testify against Selah and Quincy. Tell the police everything I know about their operation, in exchange for immunity. That is between you and the prosecutors. But you could put in a good word for me. Tell them I was just a victim, that Selah manipulated me into helping." I studied her face, seeing the fear and desperation there. Ariel had made bad choices, but she was not vicious like Selah and Quincy. She was just weak and in over her head. "I will consider it," I said finally, "but I want something in return. Anything. I want you to go on record about everything. Not just the financial stuff, but the personal stuff, too. Selah's plans to leave me after the wedding, the way she talked about me behind my back. All of it." Ariel nodded eagerly. "Yes, I can do that. I have recordings." "Recordings?" "On my phone." I was paranoid about getting caught, so I recorded some of our conversations as insurance. I have Selah admitting to the affair, talking about using your money to start a new life with Quincy. Everything. This was better than I had hoped. Turn those over to the police. Cooperate fully with their investigation, and I will speak to the prosecutor about your cooperation." Ariel left, looking relieved for the first time in days. An hour later, I called the detective in charge of the case and told him about Ariel's willingness to cooperate. I did not mention the recordings. I would let Ariel surprise them with those. Thursday brought the final act. Selah was arrested at her apartment on charges of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The evening news showed her in handcuffs being led to a police car while reporters shouted questions. She kept her head down, but I could see the fury in her eyes even from the television screen. The local paper ran a front-page story about the wedding scam, detailing how Selah and Quincy had planned to defraud me out of my savings. Ariel's recordings were mentioned prominently, along with quotes from the prosecutor calling it one of the most callous and premeditated schemes he had seen in years. My phone rang that evening. It was Selah calling from jail. "You destroyed my life," she said without preamble. "You destroyed your own life," I replied. "I just made sure everyone knew about it. I could have loved you, Elias, if you had just been willing to change, to take some risks, to live a little. By stealing from me, by lying to me, by planning to abandon me after our wedding." I laughed. "That is not love, Selah. That is sociopathy. You are going to regret this. When you are sitting alone in that house growing old by yourself, you will remember what you threw away." "Maybe," I said, "but I will sleep well at night knowing I am not sharing my bed with a thief." I hung up and blocked her number. Friday was quiet. The media circus was winding down. The reporters had moved on to other stories, and the town was slowly returning to normal. I reopened the shop and tried to get back to work, but my heart was not in it. That evening, I was sitting on my back porch with a beer when Harper showed up. My sister was 5 years younger than me, a lawyer in Portland with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. "Hell of a week," she said, settling into the chair next to mine. "That is one way to put it. The whole family has been worried about you. Mom wanted to drive up here and make sure you were eating." "I am fine." Harper studied my face. "Are you?" "Because from where I am sitting, you look like a man who just burned down his entire life." My life was already burned down. I just made sure everyone could see the flames. Selah was a piece of work. I will give you that. But Elias, what you did to her, to all of them, that was some serious scorched earth stuff. I turned to look at my sister. "You think I went too far? I think you did what you had to do. But I also think you need to be careful about what this turns you into." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Do not let their poison make you bitter. Do not let what they did change who you are." We sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the water. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of boats returning to harbor, their engines puttering softly as they navigated the channel. "So what is next?" Harper asked. "I do not know," I admitted. "For the first time in 2 years, I have no plans. No wedding, no fiancée, no shared future to worry about." Sounds liberating. Sounds terrifying. Harper laughed. "Same thing." After she left, I stayed on the porch until well after dark, thinking about everything that had happened. Selah had been right about one thing. I would probably end up alone. But maybe that was not such a bad thing. Maybe being alone was better than being with someone who saw you as nothing more than a means to an end. My phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "Drinks at Green's tomorrow night. Lewis is buying the first round for the man who cleaned up the town." I smiled and typed back, "I will be there." The party was over, but maybe that was fine. Maybe it was time to start something new. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.